Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. So yesterday we were discussing about Kapila's teachings on bhakti. I also mentioned, of course, he had chapters on Jnana, yoga, etc., and karma. But I'm not going to really cover those things because we're more interested in the bhakti chapters. So chapter 25 and 29 are basically the main chapters on bhakti, except for 33 also is. So covered a lot of the concepts presented in chapter 25, what is bhakti, etc. So in this chapter, Kapila also covers mixed bhakti. So this is not actually pure bhakti or uttama bhakti as described by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. And that uttama bhakti or pure bhakti is the bhakti that is necessary in sadhana to get to prema and to develop rasa. If we mix the bhakti in different ways, we get different results. So there's different types of mixtures. So in this particular verse, he's talking about bhakti mixed with jnana and vairagya for attaining higher results. So normally we see that in Nectar Devotion, Rupa Goswami says jnana and vairagya are not parts of bhakti, they're not angas of bhakti. And they may be a little favorable in the beginning, but they can also be unfavorable, and they can dry up your heart. So therefore, to get too seriously involved in jnana and vairagya with your bhakti is not recommended. But anyway, he talks about this because this was quite common in that time when he was speaking. Some people are interested in such things, particularly people who were jnanis or yogis before and they became devotees, so they like to mix things together. So you can do that, but you get different result. So you can mix jnana and vairagya, you can mix karma, you can mix yoga, and by doing that, you weaken the bhakti. So it's not pure bhakti, and thus the result will be different. Let's see, why isn't it? Doesn't want to move. Okay, okay. So if here we have karma yoga, if you just do karma yoga, basically, and you don't even worship the Lord anywhere in that yoga system, you really can't get a result. So this is also stated in Bhagavad Gita. Karma yoga, which is devoid of worship of Vishnu, is also useless. So you can't even get material results like Swargaloka. If you add a little bit of bhakti and you do worship Vishnu, at least you can get to Swargaloka. Yeah? So karma yoga with a little bit of respect for Vishnu gives you some result. And if you do jnana yoga and you don't do anything, don't worship the Lord at all, you can't get liberation. This is stated in Bhagavatam. If you disrespect the Lord as a jnani, then you fall from your position. And you may think you're liberated, but you're not. If you have a little bhakti in there, then you can actually get liberation. So jnana yoga and karma yoga depend on bhakti to get their results. This is not commonly known by the Gyanis in the modern world, and even by the Mayavadis, for instance. They don't accept the Supreme Lord as a real entity. At best, he's a Sattva manifestation or something like that, which is Maya. So therefore, they fulfill the prediction of Bhagavatam that says that the Jnani who doesn't worship the Lord and disrespects him actually falls from his position. So they don't get liberation. Some Jnanis, of course, are more intelligent. They will understand from scripture that you have to worship Vishnu, so they'll do that. But they are interested in liberation, so the Lord gives them liberation. But you can't even get liberation if you offend the Lord. That's what happens there. So these are, but it's all mainly this the jnana yoga or karma yoga with a little bhakti, and you get some result at least. But the end result is quite different, even if we do mainly bhakti, but we mix a little bit of karma or jnana, for instance, here. So the pink part is the bhakti, and we still have a little karma in there. It's much better than if you do all karma yoga with a little bit of bhakti. So you can get better than Svargaloka, definitely. And ultimately, that a large amount of bhakti will purify you so that you can get Sarupya and Salokya and Sarsti in the spiritual world. Very good. And if you do jnana a little bit, along with your bhakti, mostly bhakti, as we see here, mostly bhakti, a little bit of jnana over there, you can get up to Shankarasa. But that's the maximum you can get. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you can't get Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya by these mixtures. So that is why in Nectar Devotion, Rupa Goswami says you have to do Uttama Bhakti to enter into the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of nectar or bhakti. If you don't, if you mix it, then you don't get that ocean. You get something else, of maximum Shanta Rasa, or you get Sarupya, Salokya, Shashti, etc. So the logic behind this is that if we do mostly bhakti, good, but we mix it with other things, the bhakti becomes weaker. And it gets a little bit influenced. The influence in jnana, if we mix jnana with the bhakti, is that the angas of bhakti, angas of jnana, mixed with a little idea of getting liberation and getting peace, etc., influence that bhakti so that you could only end up with Shankarasa as a result. And if you're doing mainly bhakti yoga, but karma yoga is there, then you still have a little bit of desire for some enjoyment. So again, it weakens the bhakti and it prevents full development of rasa in the spiritual world. But the Lord fulfills your desire, so you do get a nice place, a nice body, the nice powers in the spiritual world. That's Salokya, Sarupya, Sarsti, but you don't get such a wonderful relationship with the Lord. Why? Because you did have that desire for some enjoyment, etc., in your bhakti. So the two yogas, jnana and karma, will influence and cause, let's say, an obstruction to getting full development of rasa. But superior to doing karma or jnana or a mixture of karma and jnana with a little bhakti. Get much better result, but still not the best result. Oops. And if we do pure bhakti, uttama bhakti, as also described in the Nectar Devotion, then you can get these prema with the higher rasas, beyond Shanta rasa. Those can all develop. Of course, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya basically is for Krishna. And with other forms of the Lord, you're not going to get that. You get Dasya only, like with Ramchandra, Dasya, with Vishnu, Dasya. Okay, so therefore the conclusion is that we should practice pure bhakti. This is represented here by Tivrana Bhakti Yogena, and Tivrana means intense or sharp, whatever. So we do bhakti yoga, which is very intense. It's not weakened by mixtures, and then we will get the highest benefit. So the same conclusion as in Nectar Devotion. And thus we can get into the different rasas in the spiritual world, develop nicely. Well. So the other interesting chapter is chapter 29, which again, the intermediate chapters are about other things like jnana and liberation and Astanga yoga and things like that. So we don't need to discuss those. Chapter 29 is also about bhakti. He also discusses bhakti in the gunas. Now, there's a little difference. We're talking about karma, Mr. Bhakti, and jnana, Mr. Bhakti. They're, of course, in the gunas, but those words, karma and jnana, imply those systems which have particular types of actions. So karma yoga means following varnashramic rules, etc. And Jnana yoga means you follow after the process of jnana and study Upanishads and practice renunciation and controlling your senses and whatever like that. So they have particular practices they follow there. In chapter 29, there's a discussion of bhakti in Kama, Rajas, and Sattva. So this does not depend on following the rules and regulations of karma or jnana, but the gunas are still there. Obviously, if you're following karma yoga or jnana yoga, there's gunas. Basically, jnana yoga is in sattva, and karma yoga may be in kama or raja, and it can border on sattva if we do nishkama karma yoga. So there could be a variety. This is in the gunas, but this can be devoid of those practices of varnashram or jnana, etc., but it's still in the gunas. So someone asked, I think last night, that, well, how can bhakti be in the gunas because it's supposed to be transcendental? And that is true. So when we say it's sattva-gun bhakti or rajagun bhakti, tamagun bhakti, it's not that the bhakti itself is in the gunas. It's the people that are in the gunas. So if you got large influence of rajagun and you're doing the bhakti, then this is what we call rajagun bhakti. The bhakti itself is transcendental. Similar to Krishna or the holy name or whatever. The holy name is pure. It's Chintamani like Krishna, but if people with a lot of material desires are chanting the holy name, then it becomes contaminated in one sense. We don't get the full result because we got so many material desires, etc. So therefore, when we talk about the gunas, it's not the bhakti that is affected actually, but it's the people who are covered by the gunas chanting the name or practicing bhakti. Okay. So in chapter 25 previously, there was this a statement there that about pure bhakti, bhakti to the Lord without material desires. And this, of course, is the same as uttama bhakti in nectar devotion. And the definition of sadhana in nectar devotion is to engage the senses. So that's covered here. Actions of the senses to reveal sense objects related to the Lord and conform to Guru's instructions. So this is easily gives liberation, goes beyond liberation. But then we have these types of bhakti and the gunas. So bhakti is beyond the gunas, but because people are contaminated by the gunas, we will talk tamaguna bhakti, but actually it's not the bhakti that's tamaguna, it's the people that have the gunas in them. Okay. So what is bhakti and tamas? The angry person devoid of compassion, worships with intentions of violence, pride, and hatred is tamasic in his bhakti. So our intentions are the wrong intentions. So this is apart from following any rules of varnashram or anything, just he's got really bad intentions of violence or whatever. In the commentary there, Vishnu Chakravarti says we can actually think of 3 different grades of tamas. It's all bad, but anyway, you have 3 different grades: the lowest, the medium, and the highest. So the lowest one is the person who likes to destroy others, worships the Lord to destroy other people. That's the worst, very destructive. The second lowest, or the middle one, is the one who has a cheating mentality in his bhakti. So he's worshiping the Lord, but he has all these desires. It's not revealing to the Lord, but he actually has tamasic desires involved in that. And then the best one, it says he's in a competitive mood after seeing worship of devatas. He prefers, let's say, worshiping Vishnu, so therefore he's doing bhakti over devatas, etc. But again, his motivations are all wrong, but he's just choosing Vishnu over the others for certain, material reasons or whatever. So that's less violent, obviously, than the first one, at least. And we have bhakti and rajagun, or persons with rajagun who are doing the bhakti. So he who worships me with desire for other objects, with goals of material gain, fame or power has rajasic bhakti. So again, we have the lowest type, material gain, middle is getting fame, and the best is one who just wants power out of that. It's all rajasic intentions of promoting oneself in the material world, either through wealth or position or whatever. And then we have bhakti in sattva. He who worships with the desire to destroy karma, making his work and offering to the Supreme Lord, or executing the worship as a duty, having a desire for liberation, has sattvic bhakti. So we see that the character of sattva is superior to those in Rajaguna and Tamaguna, and they are more nishkama, less material desires are involved. So we see like doing worship out of duty or whatever like that, with no material motives involved. But we also see sattva gun generally leads to the desire for liberation. We have artha, dharma, kama, and moksha as the goals of the varnashram system. And when you become sattvic and become brahminical, you strive for liberation, destroy all your karmas. So it's natural that someone in sattva would want to destroy his karmas and get liberation. So as a result of that, generally, they're the people that in sattva desire liberation. So that can also mix with your bhakti. So the lowest one is the one who just wants to destroy his karma. The Madhyama offers the results of his work to the Lord, and the Uttama worships as a duty with no material attachment. So worship is there, but we say the love intentions or the affection is not so much, it's more other duty. So in this way, the bhakti and the gunas is there, and it's superior is not doing bhakti, but according to intentions, we're going to get different results. So this is more or less a summary here with mixture. We had the jnana and the karma mixture bhakti. When jnana is secondary and bhakti is primary, it's called jnana mixture bhakti. So the mostly bhakti with a little jnana, and it produces shantarati beyond the gunas. If jnana predominates and bhakti is secondary, that is mostly jnana with a little bit of bhakti. Bhakti is just an anga of jnana, then it produces maybe sayuja bhakti, you can get after that. Bhakti mixed with karma, such as horse sacrifice with desire for material gain, with some offering of actions and attachment to results, but not offering all the action produces salokya, liberation with happiness, whatever like that. If one performs bhakti and offers some karmas without desire for result, it produces shantarati. So in either case, whether we do a mixture of jnana or karma, we don't get full results. Okay. So we talked about the guna part there. So sattvic bhakti produces some sort of knowledge, though rajasic and tamasic bhakti produce results. The performers generally get material results. So this is quite low. They don't get salokya, sashti, or anything like that. This is quite low. But they will get better results than if they didn't do bhakti at all. But get some results. If they are very fortunate, such persons who do this type of bhakti can progress to pure bhakti and get very good results that way, but it depends on the mercy of devotees ultimately for that. But that's so with any of these mixed bhaktis, they can progress from that mixed bhakti to pure bhakti also, if they get association of devotees practicing pure bhakti. So here we have some statement about the pure bhakti again. Because the mind, by hearing about my qualities, flows continuous to me, the Supreme Lord residing in the hearts of all people, just as the Ganga flows to the ocean. It is said that the quality of bhakti beyond the gunas is absence of results other than bhakti and lack of obstructions from other processes. So this again is similar to the description we find in Nectar Devotion, that basic Anya Abhilasha Shunya verse. Yeah. We see in the 11th canto teachings of Krishna to Uddhava. There he talks about faith in the different gunas and everything, all sorts of things in the different gunas. So faith directed towards Atma is in Sattva. And generally, Atma can lead to understanding you're not the body, so that can lead to liberation. Faith rooted in prescribed karma is in Rajas, and faith residing in irreligious activities in Tamas. But faith in my devotional service is purely transcendental, beyond the gunas. So bhakti is beyond the gunas, jnana yoga in sattva, karma yoga in rajas, and no yoga in tamas. So here's another very famous verse here. This verse is there to show that the devotees are so pure, they don't even accept the spiritual benedictions like Sarvati. The devotees do not accept living on my planet, having similar powers, staying close to me, or having a similar form, what to speak of merging into me when these things are offered, unless, in other words, the Lord offers them, unless it involves service to me. So the service to the Lord is the most important element for the devotee. And he doesn't aspire for Salokya, Sarski, Samiti, or anything like that. So, therefore, these things are also generally favorable for bhakti, except sadhuja, which means merging in the Lord. The other ones, in most cases, can be favorable. So the Lord does award to the devotee without asking, spiritual world, Vaikuntha, or Goloka. And you get a spiritual body, obviously, because you have to serve the Lord in the spiritual world. So you get Sarupi also. And you get Samipya, you get close relationship with the Lord. So these things are automatically achieved. And even Sarshti, which means powers. Generally, we don't think of devotees showing powers, and they don't. But they're readily available for devotees also. There's no problem for that. So they're always acceptable for the devotee, provided they are accompanied by service to the Lord. So the goal of the devotee finally is prema, which is actually bhakti also. We have sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. So prema is also bhakti. So this is, you can say, the goal of sadhana is ultimately prema. So that's the bhakti with complete absence of anything except the desire to serve the Lord. When we do sadhana bhakti, technically we do have anarthas, but we call it uttama bhakti anyway, but it's not absolutely pure because we're going through anartha nivritti, etc. So, but because we are trying to serve the Lord without asking for anything, either liberation or material desires, we call it pure bhakti. And it's that pure bhakti in sadhana, which is not really pure, which will lead to the prema, which is the ultimate pure bhakti. But if we mix it and we have these other desires in there, or gunas in there, then we don't get this result of thing. We get these maximum shantarams. That's why pure bhakti is very important. Now, most devotees will feel, well, oh no, I'm not doing pure bhakti, I'm doing mixed bhakti, whatever. Yeah. But, sadhana itself for the devotees following Lord Chaitanya, or actually in any of the bona fide sampradayas, should be pure bhakti even in sadhana. We have desires and whatever, but we're not asking explicitly and continually for material benedictions and liberation when we're doing our sadhana. Yeah, the desires are there in the subconscious or whatever, but we're not explicitly asking for these things, which is quite distinct from people in the material world who may be doing some sort of bhakti out of tradition or whatever. It's just customary to go to the temple, ask Balaji or anyone for material benedictions. That's what people go to Balaji for. They get more money. So it's natural for them to ask for things, but that's all excluded in pure bhakti. We don't ask for those things at all. Here's another interesting statement. The mind should be purified by following varnashram duties approved by previous devotees without desire for results. So that's like nishkama karma yoga, and which are favorable for bhakti, and by always performing a powerful pancharakta deity worship, the best choices and without unnecessary violence. So we've already seen that Kapila Dev is talking about pure bhakti and don't mix it with karma or jnana. So here now he's saying you do your varnashram duties of karma yoga along with the pancharatma worship and bhakti. So what is this? So Vishnu Chakravarti explains here, it should be understood that one should follow the rules of smriti or varnashram for purity of body, cloth, and utensils, by purify your body by earth, for instance, and or water, etc., and other agents without mantra, which are suitable for bhakti processes like archana. So we follow some rules of the varnashram system in terms of purity, body, cloth, items, etc. And those are mentioned in Kardi Bhakti Vilas, for instance. And they're commonly practiced in the varnashram system. So there's nothing wrong with doing that because it's only to do with their body and our cloth and utensils, etc. So we follow the rules for purity for that. And that's good for archana process. But that doesn't mean we're following all the rules. Because that would contradict other statements in Bhagavatam and Nectar Devotion. For instance, here, 11th canto, Krishna says, a person who understanding good and bad aspects of Dharma as Tapabi gives up all his duties. He gives up the varnashram system and simply worships me. He is the best of all. So he's simultaneously saying, do the varnashram duties and give them up here. So ultimately, what he's saying here, do the varnashram duties along with Pancharakta, you select those things which are suitable for purity, etc. But it doesn't mean you follow everything. So that's the general attitude of the devotees. They will choose certain things which are favorable for the bhakti. Other things they will reject. And they're not obligated to do everything in the varnashram system. Okay. So the concept of bhakti is there, the purity of bhakti, etc., and engagement of the senses. So as in the Nectar Devotion, where Rupa Goswami describes the different angas of bhakti, here also Kapila Dev describes how to perform this bhakti, apart from our mental attitude. So the mind should be purified by offering obeisances to, praying to, worshiping, touching, and seeing my deity forms, thinking of my presence in all beings, and giving up bad association with determination. The mind should become purified by greatly respecting the great devotees, showing compassion to the unfortunate, being friendly to one's equals, and following the yama and niyama of Ashtanga Yoga. The mind should become purified by continually hearing about the good and bad qualities of the antakarana, that means the mind, intelligence, etc. By chanting my names, by sincere association with great devotees without pride. So we have a whole series of activities that one can do in relation to the Lord. Remarkable here, of course, is the fact that he often talks about compassionate to the unfortunate, following yamas and niyamas of Ashtanga Yoga, etc. So he adds a little bit of thing like that in, which looks like, well, it's not in the Nectar Devotion so much. But if we look at, for instance, yama and niyamas, basically these are codes of conduct, which are similar, we can say, to follow four regular principles for us. So it involves no thieving and no lying and no cheating, etc. So there's no real contradiction there. And as for seeing the Lord's presence in all beings and showing compassion to the unfortunate, sometimes we say, well, look, Prabhupada was often saying, we're not building hospitals and things like that. We're not interested in that. This is what the Ramakrishna mission does, so we don't do this. We're more interested in saving the soul, so we just preach. So we have things like, compassion to the unfortunate, so we're going to feed all the poor people and help the poor people, etc. But we see here in the teachings of Kapila, there's quite a bit of emphasis upon the understanding that if you're a devotee, You understand that all of the jivas are servants of the Lord ultimately. And therefore, we have to give them respect somehow or other. And we cannot be indifferent to any living entity. And that's part of bhakti itself. So therefore, it's not so, it looks a little bit foreign to us sometimes, but actually it is intrinsic to bhakti itself to show compassion to all jivas. This is also represented in the nectar devotion, where the 20th anga, 19th anga is do not disturb any living entity. This is one of the rules of bhakti, preliminary rules in the door to bhakti. It's one of the preliminary rules that don't disturb any living entity. So that means we show some compassion for all living entities. Yeah. Okay. Another verse, I, the soul of all beings, am always situated in all beings. He who disrespects me in all beings performs false worship of my deity form. So here again, we get this idea: you start disrespecting other living entities, you're actually also disrespecting the Supreme Lord, because he's also there in everybody. So therefore, your deity worship, it becomes useless if you're not merciful to other living entities, because you're worshiping the Lord in one form, not in the other form. So therefore, you have to show compassion to everyone. So offense creates restriction. Offense generally stems from disrespect to the great devotees. Though such devotees are difficult to see, many exist. In order to avoid offenses to them, one should pay respects to all living entities, thinking that the Lord is present in all of them. Without doing so, even worshiping the deity form of the Lord will not give any results. So this is giving another reason. You don't know where the great devotees exist, so you better worship everybody, respect everybody. And there's no problem doing that because the Lord is in everybody anyway. So we do have to give proper respect. And if we look carefully, you'll see in Lord Chaitanya also says the same thing. Manada. In the Shastastika, you give respect to everybody. And don't be proud yourself. So it's and this is the cornerstone of chanting nicely. You can chant always if you follow these principles of being humble and tolerant and giving respect to all others. So it's actually a principle there. So it's not surprising that it also comes up here in Kapila's teachings. Yeah. Just another statement of the same thing. If a person offers respect to me but is inimical to other beings, hating other bodies, not seeing others suffering as equal to his own, his mind does not attain peace. Oh, mother, he's actually talking to his mother now. I am not pleased with the person who criticizes other beings while worshiping my deity form with rites using various materials. When a person does not know that the Lord is situated in all beings, that person should worship me in the deity form along with the prescribed rules without attachment. So this is similar to the other statement that we have a Kanishta devotee. So he worships the Lord in the temple, and that's all he's capable of. He doesn't respect the devotees or anything. So that's the lowest category. So if you can't do anything, at least you worship the deity. And by doing that, eventually, maybe you're going to realize that the Lord is situated in all beings. But you start out with just seeing the Lord in the temple and worship. We don't respect the devotees or anybody else. But by doing so, hopefully, one will progress. Since those practicing pure bhakti by their nature have pure antakaranas, they generally do not disrespect any living being. However, the karma Mr. Bhaktas can disrespect other living entities until the impurities of the antakarana no longer remain. Disrespect is possible. When the antakarana is pure, disrespect is not possible. At that time, you should no longer perform karma with this bhakti. So when we get to the bhakti stage, we're not obligated to do karmas. Before that, the karmas are there for helping to purify the person. Among the humans, those within the Varna ashram are superior. Among the Varnas, the Brahmana is the best. Among the Brahmanas, one who knows the Vedas is superior. Well, they're supposed to all know the Vedas, but Literally, they don't. So those that do are better, those that know the Vedas. Among the knowledgeable Brahmins, those who know the Vedas, one who knows the meaning of the Vedas is superior. Huh? Better than the knower of the meaning of the Vedas is the Brahmana who can cut doubts. So he's got so expert that he can also talk to other people and convince them. Better than the one who cuts doubt is the Brahmana who also performs his duties completely. He follows conduct as well as words. Better still is the Jnani who does not enjoy the results of his previous actions in Dharma. Superior to the Jnani is a person who fully dedicates his activities, such as hearing and chanting, as well as his identity, his mind, and his intelligence to me. In other words, the devotee is superior to all of those. I do not see a greater living entity than this person who has offered himself to me, giving up all varnashram actions, who thinks that the Lord alone inspires his bhakti and who identifies with others' happiness and distress. So we see in the teachings of Kapila something very similar to Ramananda goes through all these different things and finally says that of all the living entities, the devotee, the Vaishnava is supreme over the Brahmana, even the Brahmana who has knowledge or the Jnani, etc. So in other words, this whole section is a glorification of the position of bhakti and the devotees practicing pure bhakti. He ends this chapter with a discussion of time, which is a big influence on people in the material world. And time also is mentioned by the I'm time the destroyer. So time is there, and it's another form of the Lord. Of course, it's a secondary form of the Lord. I am this form of Bhagavan who also appears as Brahman, Paramatma, beyond material nature, who am also defined as Prakriti, Jiva, Karma, and astonishing time, the cause of transformation of material objects, from which fear arises for living beings with material bodies in ignorance. Unchanging time without beginning, but causing everyone's birth creates populations and mothers and fathers, and time without end, but causing everyone's end destroys those subject to death by death itself. So this is how time operates in the material world. So this is quite opposite of what is being discussed in this chapter, but this is chapter 29. But then the next chapter is all about tamagun and then hellish existence and things like this. So the miseries of the material world. So this is just an introduction to the next chapter, actually, where he talks about the influence of time on the living entities in the material world. Okay. Any question about it?
So you have explained previously like pure bhakti is caused only by bhakti and mercy of devotee. But whereas the bhakti in the guna, so can we assume those bhaktis can also be caused only by bhakti, or it can karma yoga, jnana yoga, lead to bhakti?
Well, we see that all these different processes, in order to be successful, they have to have a little bhakti in them anyway. So, and in that sense, we can say one who's doing karma yoga, if it's got a little bhakti in it, that could lead also to pure bhakti eventually, because he's doing a little bit of bhakti there. But usually it requires the mercy of a devotee who's practicing pure bhakti. Otherwise, we don't get pure bhakti out of that. If we get a person who mixed bhakti, then okay, they get mixed bhakti. So generally, we need someone practicing pure bhakti to bring you to that higher stage of pure bhakti, whatever we're doing.
Linked to this question, a bit long question, but now the cause of attachment to something, which is always at the back of mind. So when you start chanting, sometimes you need something. Your attachment is strong, and while you're chanting, then there comes a point where you forget everything and you start enjoying chanting. But then you are reminded, oh yeah, I need that thing, and then that also starts in parallel. And sometimes when you're cooking, you're offering, you offer because there is a desire in the back of mind. So and once the desire is fulfilled, then the attachment reduces. I mean, that's the case with me. And if I draw a parallel, Arjuna wanted to kill Bhishma Pitama. Now, initially he did not, but when Krishna said, yes, you should, and then he said, okay, I will. But then he wanted to know how to kill, and that would be the end result of killing Bhishma Pitama. And then there was a provision how to kill. But was it not with the attachment to killing? Because the result was already manifested that how to kill. So it was not without the. I mean, sometimes I um, um, satisfy myself that okay, if Arjuna could do, I should also have a desire and I should have an end goal, and So I justify it to, though I know that it's not right, but I'm still confused.
Well, bhakti is not without desire. Of course, we say, anya abhilasha shunya, no other desire. So there is one desire. That bhakti must have some sort of impetus. So the impetus is desire to please Krishna, ultimately. So that's, of course, the desire of Arjuna. He wants to please Krishna, so he'll follow his order or whatever like that. So we're not without desire, but somehow or other, we should direct that desire to the pleasure of Krishna, ultimately. In the beginning, this probably will be a little bit difficult in some cases because we're coming out of the material world, and it's only by advancing that we start getting rid of all these desires. But at least theoretically, we're trying to practice that pure bhakti, only for Krishna, desiring only for Krishna and no other desire for ourselves. So that's the theoretical framework when we start sadhana bhakti. But as I said, you do have the desires in your mind and whatever, so many other unconscious things are there anyway. And they'll only be purified as we go through process of anartha, vritti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prema. Gradually they get less and less and less. But at least as far as our goal is to get to that pure stage, and that should be kind of fixed from the very beginning, that we're trying to cultivate only for the pleasure of Krishna. Not perfect, but that's because of sadhana. But it will be perfect in prema. But if we don't have that initial goal, even in our sadhana, then we don't get that. So that's why the mixed bhakti doesn't lead to the prema.
The two questions on Zoom. Sometimes they mention that reading the works of the previous acharyas is akin to Jnana Yoga. Is the attempt to understand Krishna's pastime regarded as Jnana?
Well, the word Jnana, of course, means knowledge. But usually when we use the word in ISKCON and often in the scriptures also, Jnana Yoga refers more to the impersonal Jnana. Yeah? Now, some Jnana Yoga has that little bit of worship of the Lord in it, and by that you get at least liberation. Other Jnana is the Mayavad Jnana, where everything is illusion, even the form of the Lord, so they don't even worship the Lord. So that's utterly condemned. On the other hand, we have Jnana in a general sense, and that can refer to bhakti also. In other words, you read Bhagavad Gita, that is Jnana, that is knowledge. So we have, we can call all this Bhagavad Gita. So that is never condemned and never discouraged. In fact, it's a necessity. The scripture is a necessity for us. So where do we get out of scripture? Bhagavad Gita, spiritual knowledge. And the whole process of accepting a guru is to get spiritual knowledge. So that type of jnana is very necessary. In order to practice pure bhakti or chant the name purely, we need knowledge, proper knowledge. So that is why we have scriptures. That's why Prabhupada translated and commented on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, so we get proper knowledge, so we can practice pure bhakti and chant the holy name purely, so that we can get to prema. So that type of knowledge, that type of jnana is very necessary for us.
I had a question. What are some tips that we can follow to fast track one's journey from mixed bhakti to pure bhakti?
Well, hopefully, if we just read even the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, we should be practicing pure bhakti by then. because you know, even in introduction prose, they don't worship the devatas, don't ask for material things. Whole goal is to be the eternal servant of Krishna. We're trying to please Krishna. The definition of Hare Krishna is, Lord, please engage me in your service. So all of these things are actually indicating pure bhakti. So that's how we should begin our devotional service. Now, of course, we're not pure, one says, because we're coming out of the material world. We start with a little shraddha, a little bit of bhakti, but we have all these anarthas, all these desires, etc. So we're not literally pure, but as I said, our goal should be that purity in our service. So therefore, when we begin devotional service, we should not have the idea, well, I'm doing mixed bhakti, I'm doing bhakti, and I'm also praying for my material benefit. In relation to Krishna, when we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're not asking for material things every day. So therefore, in one sense, we are practicing pure bhakti from the beginning. Our devotional service within, the Gaudiya Sampradaya at least. But if we want to advance, yes, and get rid of the anarthas, that's a genuine desire to have. And we go through anartha nivritti, nishta, ruchi, etc. How to do it quickly? Knowledge. That is a scriptural knowledge of what is pure, what is impure, etc. And understanding what is favorable and what is unfavorable for bhakti. And which we also get from scripture. And association of devotees. It can set a good example for us. So in that way we can steadily progress. Our bhakti increases and our anarthas and material desires will decrease.
What happens to those who attain sub-optimal states of Salukya or Salokya, etc.? Do they get another chance?
Oh, little late. Whatever you perform in your sadhana, that kind of seals your fate in the spiritual world. And once you get that, even if we will consider it a little unfortunate if you get sarupya, but you're not getting prema. But the people who get that feel they're very fortunate, and they don't want anything else because that was their aspiration, more or less, to enjoy in the spiritual world. So they get the enjoyment. They get a nice spiritual body, a nice spiritual place, and whatever. And the Lord is there to bless them. So they feel very nice with that without doing too much service. So in other words, like the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, if you worship the Devatas, you go to the Devatas. You worship the Pretas, you go to the Pretas. You worship the Buddhas, you go to the Buddhas. You worship me, you go to me. But then worshiping Krishna, you can go in various ways, according to mixed bhakti, pure bhakti, tamaga bhakti, whatever. There's various destinations there. And if you do bhakti, which is mixed with a little karma or jnana, then you actually get the spiritual world, but you don't get the same as worshiping Krishna purely. So you have to decide early on with some knowledge to practice pure bhakti, and then we get a better result.
Lord Chaitanya mentions in Chaitanya Charitamrita 22 that only by Uttama Bhakti or Radhanuga Bhakti can develop Vraja Rasa. How is this different than Vaidhi Bhakti that leads to Narayana?
Both Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti are sadhanas, and they can be practiced as Uttama Bhakti or pure bhakti. Rather than mixed, it could be practiced mixed bhakti also, but we would prefer to do them in pure bhakti, Uttama Bhakti, and you could do either, and that's what is presented in Nectar Devotion. It gives Uttama Bhakti, definition of Anya Abhalashka Shunya, etc. And then he discusses three types, sadhana, bhava, and prema. So he starts in the second chapter, or the first part, with sadhana bhakti, which is Uttama, and he has two types, Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Both are sadhanas, both are Uttama Bhakti. And through both of them, we can get to bhava and prema. But the result is slightly different because you practice with Vaidhi, according to rules and regulations, then you have a conception that the Lord is supreme and we worship him with reverence. And that will continue into realization in bhava and prema. So even if we're worshiping Krishna and Vaidhi Bhakti, we can realize Krishna, but we realize him with reverence. We see him as God. And that will continue into prema. But if you do that, you cannot be in Vrindavan or Vraja because the people there never see Krishna as God. So you can't go there. So one alternative is go to Dwarka, where the inhabitants there, the queens, have Krishna as our husband. They also see him as Supreme Lord. There's this Aishwarya. Vasudeva Bhakti, Vatsalya Rasa. But they also see him as Supreme Lord. So that exists in Dwarka. So you could attain that by Vaidhi Bhakti and sadhana, getting into bhava, getting into prayer and worshiping Krishna. So you could get that type of result. Raganuga, on the other hand, is to take the inhabitants of Vrindavan as the ideal, and we try to worship in the same way as they do, which means without seeing Krishna as God, in a more spontaneous way. So in sadhana, that's called Raganuga. So that will continue. It doesn't mean we don't follow any rules. We do follow rules, but at least our conception of Krishna is not that he's Supreme Lord. We start covering that up and seeing him like the people of Vrindavan do. And then we get to bhava, and we realize Krishna in Vrindavan. And then finally in prema, we can enter into Vrindavan with Krishna because we don't see him as Supreme Lord.
You mentioned about the Prabhupada Guru, that one of the types of devotees, they hide their desires from the Lord. I was wondering, because the super soul is on the shield.
Okay.
So what does it actually mean to hide your desires?
Well, of course, ultimately they can't hide anything from Supreme Lord, but at least they can try and be deceptive in their intentions. They could pretend to be, very sincere when actually they're insincere. They could be asking for one thing but actually desiring another thing, etc. So in that sense, deceptive.
Thank you very much for nice class. I have two parts of the question. With the devotees, the devotees, they already have some form and spiritual way, and they decide to liberate and help other devotees.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of Buddha jivas like us, what happens? Do we have some inclination from our previous difficulties, or how do we move forward in which direction we want to go, or we have a complete free will to choose which destination we want?
Yeah. Well, it all begins with mercy. Even when we're not devotees, we're qualified with faith. But faith itself requires mercy also to get to the stage of faith. So it's called agata sukriti. Because we don't have faith, it's only devotees are merciful to us that we get the mercy. And even then it's unknown. We don't even know we're getting it because we don't have faith. So a pile up of agata sukriti will lead to faith. And the faith means that we will have a implicit trust in the words of Scripture and a belief in Supreme Lord. Lord has a form, qualities, activities, etc. So that's the initial step by which we can begin devotional service. And then we go to devotees to get their mercy, and we begin the process of bhakti. So when we do that, then not so much, I can say it's a matter of choice, and it's a matter of mercy of devotees who we meet. And then by meeting those devotees, we get inspired to follow that particular process and worship that particular form. And then we continue on with that. Some devotees, of course, may change somewhere. They may start out worshiping Vishnu or Rama and then change to Krishna by association with, followers of Lord Chaitanya, or let's say one of those Sampradayas who also worship Krishna. So due to the influence of devotees, more likely than anything else, you could change from one object of worship to another. And then if you are worshiping Krishna, if you choose Gaudiya Sampradaya, then prominently we're emphasizing Madhurya Rasa, Radha Krishna, etc. Worship. But it's also not an absolute. Because That would depend again on one, hearing Bhagavatam, then you develop a certain attraction, and then association with certain devotees who may have similar tendencies, and they may influence you, inspire you in that direction. And by doing that, well, you become fixed in a particular type of worship, and then you proceed upwards into bhava and prema. So it's by mercy and association, and of course reading scripture and hearing scripture.
Thank you, Maharaj. The other part of my question was regarding we hear in real Bhagavatam that Guru Kumara had particular form in spiritual world. Unless he reached that state, he was not satisfied.
Hmm.
So do we also have something like that? Or
Well, that's he got first he got the mercy of a guru who gave him a Krishna mantra, and then he chanted the mantra for a whole day of Brahman until the next day of Brahman, etc. And he passed through the heavenly planets and got up to Vaikuntha, etc. By the power of mantra, the power of guru, etc. Then he met Narada Muni, because he seemed to be a little dissatisfied even he was in the spiritual world, because he wasn't appreciating so much the Vishnu forms and all of that. Even he got Rama, he wasn't quite satisfied or whatever. So Narada Muni said, well, the secret here is you stop the mantra, or not that you just stop it, rather you do Nam Sankirtan. And when he started that, then he got to Goloka. So, but the surprising thing is that he did not end up with Madhurya Rasa. He ended up as a Gopal, Sakya Rasa, because that was his aspiration also. So according to his aspiration, even though the mantra itself is more of a Madhurya, looks like a Madhurya Rasa mantra, he was entered in Sakya, so that's what he got by his desire and his meditation on how he wanted to serve Krishna.
Thank you for explaining these different aspects of the Isha Bhakti and also the Guna Bhakti. So in this framework, where does Dhruva speak? Where start the English?
Yeah. So he had contaminated bhakti, or inspired by Rajagun or something like that. He wanted the kingdom. That was his inspiration, anger at his stepmother or whatever like that. So it wasn't a pure beginning to his devotional service. Fortunately, he got the association Narada Muni, and who instructed him the mantra, and he began worshiping the Supreme Lord. So he had a type of not pure bhakti in the very beginning. But when he saw the Lord revealed himself, then he understood. I've been worshiping the Lord for the wrong reasons, and he gave up his material desires. But then the Lord said, well, you had those desires, so I'm going to give them to you anyway. And he forced him to be a king for how many? 23,000 years or something. So he paid the price for his mixed bhakti. And then finally he went up to Dhruva Loka. The same is the case of Gajendra, also this mixed bhakti, because he was praying to Vishnu to free him from the crocodile. So it wasn't pure. He was asking for a particular material benediction of getting free from the suffering of being bitten by a crocodile.
It seems we are practicing very bhakti, Raganama bhakti.
Yeah.
So how can we say we are in the whole of this?
Well, we, in one sense, like Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasize the vidhi aspect more. If we compare our type of bhakti with what is done in Madhva Sampradaya or Sri Sampradaya, which is very much Vaidhi Bhakti, is quite different. So though we can say we're doing Vaidhi Bhakti, it's quite different because one, we are following the Lord Chaitanya's movement and we're worshiping Krishna. We're not worshiping Krishna in Dwarka, we're worshiping in Vrindavan. And we're reading Bhagavatam and we're concentrating on the chapters of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, like Govardhan Lila and Ras Lila and Damodar Lila. This is all very raga type of topics. So we're doing that also. And we do deity worship. And in the deity worship, we're following Pancharatra. So that's Vaidhi Bhakti. But we'll see that worship is quite different from the worship of pure Vaidhi Bhakti done in Sri Sampradaya, Madhva Sampradaya again. It's much more flexible, dedicated to Krishna, and we're thinking of how to please Krishna. And when we, cook and dress and whatever, it's much more flexible. And we're thinking more of Krishna than simply rules and regulations. So, though it is Vaidhi Bhakti, because we are putting an emphasis on rules of deity worship, etc., still it is largely influenced by the Raganuga also. In the Nectar of Bhakti Sandarbha, I think it is. Jiva Goswami says you can mix the two together if you cannot do pure Raganuga, which requires a lot of mental sadhana or internal sadhana. If you can't do that purely, you can mix the Vaidhi with the Raganuga also. So I guess we're in that stage where we've got a mixture.
When Kalara returns to Bengal and Nanda Maharaj and not even sure they were put in this Jagadishwar, I'm wondering why that is.
Oh, okay. So sometimes the people of Vrindavan, even the gopis, sometimes they address Krishna. It looks like, they didn't understand his Supreme Lord. Baladev Vidbhusa makes a comment that it's not always that the Brajavasis will not see Krishna as Supreme Lord. They will, but it's very temporary. And very quickly it gets covered up again. So a very temporary phenomenon, even if they do address Krishna as Supreme Lord or as Paramatma or whatever like that, then it's kind of covered up. Another explanation is that when for instance, the gopis reach extreme separation from Krishna in their emotions, then sometimes they'll address Krishna in this way. But then when that's finished, then it's lost again. So they may have temporary expressions of Krishna as Supreme Lord, etc., but then it gets quickly covered up.
Kapila says, I'm a little confused. Do we not attain the same rasa that we when falling from Gaurav Vrindavan? If it depends on association of people.
Well, one way of answering that is that we don't look at the past, we look at our present position and we simply cultivate, and we don't think about cause and effect or anything. We just go from this point onwards. The other is that, which is mentioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, is that in the spiritual, everything is eternal. And there is no past and there's no future. And it's all eternal. So when you do attain your position in the spiritual world after practicing bhakti, etc., it becomes eternal. And there's no past and there's no future. So you can't talk about what was before and what's after. It just is. And that's eternal. So whatever you attain is your eternal position, without having reference to any other time.
What are the signs that the Lord?
Offense?
No, the Lord gets offended.
Yeah.
What are the signs that the Lord can do to show that he's offended?
Oh, well, offense to the Lord is one thing. Offense to devotees is even worse, because the Lord is more offended when you devotee of the Lord than if he gets offended. But in either case, the result will be disturbance to the bhakti. The bhakti will be impaired or slowed down to some degree. In some cases, the bhakti can be almost destroyed. And that's why the Vaishnava Purana said to be the mad elephant offense. Like if you have a mad elephant and it comes into the village, it just destroys everything. So the bhakti creeper is growing up and then the mad elephant steps on it and it's finished. So offenses against devotees can have very severe reactions, and we lose our taste for bhakti as a result.
So my understanding is that irrespective of whichever way you choose, you progress to a point, and then from there on, it gets revealed and you progress further to be at peace with what you originally wanted and what you wanted. The issue with me, the issue is that I have so much influence of gunas that I start questioning Okay, and there are a lot of crisscross thing, and then which stops me from progressing there on. I do not know. And even I look at everybody with skepticism, and this and that, and I look for the is this perfect? What if and then what if I and the end result is I do not I have no progress. I keep in that same whirlwind that because there is no perfect answers, because I am imperfect and the gunas also are there and the propensity and all that stuff. So how do people like me can progress?
How to get out of the gunas? Well, as I said, we begin with a little faith, and we have a lot of gunas, anartas, obstacles, desires, etc., which interfere with that beginning faith and a little bit of bhakti. But by increasing the faith through knowledge of scripture, if we can practice that bhakti steadily, whatever vows we make, chanting and worshiping and whatever service, if we can do that steadily, are the Atma develops more attraction for Krishna, a pure attraction of, Anya Abhalashana Shunya, no desire except desire to serve Krishna. And consequently, other desires, which are basically desires for my enjoyment, will decrease and decrease. So all the gunas will gradually disappear. So if we become steady in bhakti, this is you can say, a first step we can take. Steadiness in following our vows. This will decrease to a considerable amount the influence of the gunas, the desires, and whatever emotions or material emotions or whatever distractions. So we try to come to the level of steadiness, at least, in our vows. Okay.
One question.
Okay. Yeah.
Following this question, do you have anything to say on parallel universe?
Parallel universe.
Yeah, I may be low in my mind, but somewhere I may be somewhere Krishna.
Oh, another
Do you have
universe.
something to say about
Parallel universe, you would be doing different things, or you're doing the same thing? Huh? I don't know. This is, of course, quantum physics theory. But we do have the idea that we're not the only universe, and there are other universes doing similar things. Krishna's in all the universes, so he's performing his pastimes simultaneously, almost in different universes. So in that sense, it's parallel. But as far as us being in other universes, generally, we're only here. Other jivas are there, other jivas are other places as well. So that it's like that. Plus, in the spiritual world, then Krishna's also there simultaneously. So that's another parallel world going on where Krishna's eternal pastimes are going on. Plus, he's got his pastimes in the material world going on. So he can be in parallel universes, so to speak. But the jivas generally, they're stuck in one particular place. However, if you become a siddha and you become an eternal associate of the Lord at that point, or a mukta, whatever, then you could be in the spiritual world and in Krishna's pastime. So you could be in parallel universes also, if you're a pure devotee.
In Bhagavatam, sometimes there are statements that may sound like embellishments. For example, Krishna and Balaram, when they met the residents of Vrindavan in Kurukshetra, said that Mother Yashoda took them and their lap. But at that time, they were grown men. There's also things like many warriors had the strength of 10,000 elephants, and it seems repeatedly. So my question is, do we take everything literally in the Bhagavatam, or is there a difference?
Some of the statements, if it's not in relation directly to Supreme Lord or Krishna or whatever, can be metaphorical. So strength of 10,000 elephants, maybe not 10,000, maybe it's only 5,000 or 4,000 or 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever, but it's indicating very strong, so some of this set metaphors, so to speak, they use these. But in relation to Krishna, of course, there's no exaggeration. And in relation to bhakti, or the holy name, no exaggeration. So where it says that just chanting the holy name once you destroy all karmas, past, present, and future, that's not an exaggeration. It may seem like an exaggeration for us or for Gyanis, but actually it isn't. So it's very possible, as in the case of Ajita. So that example is given. So in relation to Krishna, then we won't find it so exaggeration. In relation to the idea of Krishna and Balaram sitting on Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj's lap. The interesting thing is that every devotee will see Krishna differently, and Krishna will respond exactly like that for that particular devotee. For instance, when Krishna let the Govardhan hill, the gopis saw him with Madhurya Rasa, this cowherd boy saw him in Sakya Rasa, and Nanda and Yasoda saw as a little boy who was incapable of holding up the mountain, so they tried to help by holding up the mountain with him. And so everybody saw him differently. You don't just one Krishna, everybody sees him differently. So even if Krishna is older in Mathura, he doesn't actually age beyond his Kaishar age when he left Vrindavan. He may have been, I don't know how many years he was there. How old is, at least he was, maybe he was 20 years old then. I don't know how old he was when he met them in Vrindavan. But anyway, from one point of view, he's older and is a Kshatriya, but he's actually the same form as when he left Vrindavan. So that's the Kaishar form when he left. So Mother Yasoda, even though they see him in that Kaishar form, they can identify him as the first form, that is the Kaumara form. That's the ideal vision of Krishna for those in Vatsalya Rasa. So they see him as a small baby, like Damodar Krishna or something like that, even though he's older. So in the spiritual world, also Krishna is Kaishar age, but Mother Yasoda and Nanda see him as a baby still. How is it possible? This is the spiritual world. Krishna can be everything, different things for everybody simultaneously. Yeah? So therefore, if Krishna and Balaram sit on their laps, it's just like they're small children again, and there's nothing surprising for Nanda and Yasoda, because that's their ideal relationship with him. So Krishna's different things for different people simultaneously.
Thank you, Pastor. I had a question in the first canto, where it's mentioned about in Dwarka there is some prostitutes, and they're devotees of Krishna. So I'm wondering if you can give a little more explanation.
Yeah, I suppose the spiritual world and Dwarka will kind of there's a dim reflection of that is the material world and the Varnashram system here. Yeah, like we have, Kshatriyas and Vaishya Kshatriyas, Sudras, etc. So in the material world, also we'll have the system, and then we'll also get the prostitutes, etc., like that, as ones. I don't know how they're classed as Sudra or whatever, they're classed, but anyway, they'll be within that system somewhere. So therefore, even in Dwarka, we'll find kind of we see the prototype for that. So those prostitutes also, if they are, depends on who they're related to. But if they have a relationship with Krishna, then it's also a type of Madhurya Rasa, but a little lower. Just as Kuja was in a type of Madhurya Rasa, but it's a very low type as in compared to the gopis or the queens of Dwarka or whatever. So it's a type of Rasa with Krishna, but a very weak form of Madhurya.
As a practicing devotees, sometimes we find in some days we are chanting, we are satisfied, and the other day it is not, and not even we are not satisfied. So does it mean that we have some aparadha has happened, or it is just
Well, aparadha will be more general lack of taste for a long period of time. If it's periodic, that just means it's we're still haven't reached a stage of steadiness. And so before the steadiness means that there, let's say, a considerable amount of the narcas are reduced, and the bhakti has been strong enough. They're still there, but they don't disturb our regular, sadhana. But if we're not at that stage, then the anartha is a little bit stronger, then they can disturb, and therefore we'll feel fluctuation in our enthusiasm and what vows, etc. So it's maybe the anarthas are still stronger than the growth of bhakti at that stage.
What you mentioned that prime bhakti is the highest. But in it starts from Chicken saying, Dhanam, he was to serve Lord life after life. He said, higher than this.
Well, the desire of rejecting all material things is a byproduct of our attraction to Krishna. And once we're attracted to Krishna, we don't want anything else. If we're at a lower stage, of course, then we will take wealth and followers, etc., as an artist that we have to avoid. We may have some attraction, but then we have to avoid them. But on a higher level, they're just automatically considered to be not very significant or so. So if one is on prema, then they're completely useless. So therefore, people in the material world will desire these things, but the devotee in bhava or prema definitely will reject them completely and only inspire for serving the Lord.
To make a devotion, a list of prerequisites for discharging devotional service. I was wondering what is meant by one should not be when ordinary dealings.
So in practicing, these are actually, I think, among the 21st angas of bhakti, I think. And there's 64 angas, and the first 20 are called the door to bhakti. And starting out with take shelter of guru, and then take initiation and shiksha, and give proper respect to the guru, and then sadhamma pritcha, ask questions. So these are the whole series of preliminaries for bhakti. So one of them is this idea of not being, say, disinterested in normal affairs to the degree that is artificial. In other words, if one is completely renounced, like Jad Bharat, of course, you can just reject the whole world, don't deal with anybody. But other people, most people, then they do have to, to a certain degree, participate in society and carry out normal duties. So they don't artificially reject those duties. It is allowed at a certain stage, but you have to be highly qualified for that. So otherwise, we do carry on duties in the material world. At the same time, we do it with some sort of detachment. Yeah? So for instance, if you are brahmachari, then we can say, okay, I'm going to ignore my parents or whatever like that. So, but of course, if we are a little more intelligent, we'll keep some relationship with them, keep a friendly relationship with them, and deal with them. Don't freak them out too much by being acting so peculiar or whatever in their presence. So we just try to, compromise a little bit in their presence and don't disturb them too much like that. So that's as far as a brahmachari is concerned. Then with other things, like if grihastas are there, then they don't artificially renounce. They act like grihastas. They have a job and they raise children, do everything like that. They don't say, well, it's unfavorable for bhakti to have children or something like that. So they don't artificially, make some sort of ideals of bhakti and artificially renounce.
Yes, we're taught that we should desire to serve Krishna simply for his pleasure. Sometimes the desire to serve or continue serving within the Sankirtan movement or to serve Srila Prabhupada's mission or the mission of the Guru appears. Is that in line with the desire to simply please Krishna, or is that something else?
The desire to please Lord Chaitanya?
Yeah, to please including serving the Sankirtan movement and Srila Prabhupada's mission.
Well, in one sense, it's all one: pleasing Krishna, pleasing Lord Chaitanya, pleasing the Sankirtan movement. We can't really differentiate between them. It's all pleasing Krishna ultimately.
I think it's the last mention of Kapila. You see, what his father lives. So if you consider his Lord is instructing for his differently under the bhakti, but his father is listening first. How do you explain that?
Well, one thing to say is that maybe he's following the system of Vanaprastha a little bit early.
by renouncing, setting a good example for others. So he isn't too attached to family members or whatever like that. Ideally, of course, in the normal system, he would wait till the child grows up and wife is settled, and then maybe even take the wife with him. But in this case, he just left. But it's an extraordinary example because Kapila himself is a form of the Lord. So it's not a normal example there.
What comes to you when you go to it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Just have a question about like the different platforms that Adhikari. Well, I was wondering if there's much of a relationship between those platforms and the platforms.
Well, in the 11th canto, the Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama, the Kanishta is not a real devotee because he doesn't even recognize devotees. So at best, he's doing mixed bhakti or bhakti abhas because he doesn't have any philosophical understanding. He just worships the Lord in the temple. That's good, but doesn't go beyond that. So it's a little bit unclear what his, idea of who the Supreme Lord is. If you're Madhyama, then you do have devotee association, you get good knowledge, you can practice pure bhakti, you avoid bad association, and you associate with devotees and serve higher devotees. So that's the normal devotee practicing sadhana bhakti. The Uttama bhakti is one who sees Krishna everywhere in prema, more bhava or prema. So he's a very advanced devotee, upper bhava or prema. And he makes no distinctions at that point. Everybody's got prema, so he doesn't even preach. So he's the highest devotee of all. So that's basically prema. So the Madhyama would be sadhana. But even Rupa Goswami puts that Madhyama even into the Bhava stage. So you could say sadhana into Bhava would be the Madhyama. And then Kanishta would be before Uttama sadhana bhakti, even before that. And then the last stage, Uttama, would be maybe upper Bhava and Prema. Okay. Hare Krishna.